what could make for better content than being rejected by all 6 dragons and almost having this really controversial snaky offer given to me that divided the whole of the country.
Today on the Scale Up podcast, we speak to Lucie Macleod, the founder of the viral sensation hair syrup. We talk about the rapid growth she's experienced and also her controversial episode of Dragon's Den.
When I woke up, probably the next day, the video had gone viral. I had over 600,000 views. My anxiety, my stress, my panic, my lack of sleep, my insomnia, just up. So we had a 967% revenue growth it was actually less than 12 months. Whatever happens on Dragon's Den, I can make a little bit of a...
Use what happens to your advantage.
I can use what happens to my advantage.
So today we're joined by Lucie Macleod of Hair Syrup. Thanks so much for joining us today. Do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I'm Lucie, I'm 25 and I'm the founder of Hair Syrup. We're a TikTok viral hair care brand basically, and we sell a range of all natural pre-wash hair and scalp oils.
And fantastic, actually, TikTok story as well on how you went viral, but we'll touch on that slightly later on. Do you want to take us all the way back, actually, I think, to kind of your first dip into entrepreneurship? Particularly interested, was there anything in kind of your early life that steered you in that direction?
Do you know what? This is probably a question for my parents because I actually can't remember. One thing I used to do when I was little, I think you hear a lot of entrepreneurs say this about the sort of lemonade stand on the outside of the house. I did all of that. And one thing that I actually did, obviously no one bought it, but what I did used to have a little store inside the house. This is really ironic because I now sell hair oils, was I used to go into my parents' garden and mix together things like mint. I can't believe I've never spoken about this before, actually. This is a huge thing. I should make a video about it. But I used to mix together things like mint and all different leaves, and then I'd mix them with water, and then I'd call it a perfume.
Yeah.
And then I'd set up this little stall. And obviously no one ever bought them. People probably just walked past and ignored me. But that whole process of creating something and then showing it to people is probably what I really liked. I was a really sort of kinesthetic learner when I was younger, and I really liked anything that was making projects or arts and crafts, DIY. I just loved all of that stuff. And that coupled with my personality traits, I think is what led me down the natural path of entrepreneurship.
And when you say personality traits, what do you point towards in your personality?
So in terms of my personality traits, I'm very ambitious. I have been since I was young. I've always been very, very driven towards success. I definitely have a few leadership tendencies, qualities. And I'd say that in some ways, I like to do things alone. I've never been part of a team sport or anything. I like just doing things for myself, by myself, and a bit of a lone wolf in that sense, I suppose. When it comes to work and achievement, I like to do my own thing and not be too reliant on other people. So things like that, I would say, has led me here.
And where do you think that ambition comes from? So you highlight that as the first thing, actually, of personality traits, very ambitious. Where do you think that comes from?
I don't know. I've just always been like it. It's funny because it's not like either of my parents are, neither of them are entrepreneurs. It's not even, no one in my family, I don't think, has got or had anything much like what I've got. People have been very corporate on my mum's side especially. So I don't really know. I think it's just an innate thing inside me. My parents obviously, both my brother and I always say to them that they should write a parenting book because both my brother and I have actually turned out quite well.
Yeah.
And so they must have done, quite a lot of things right. I don't know. And just, they were never pushy parents. You get some parents who force their kids to do well and, have to make them obsess about grades and this, that, and the other. My parents weren't like that at all. They were quite relaxed in a lot of ways, but not too relaxed. I think they struck just the right balance. So that's probably where it comes from.
So you think they gave you enough freedom to be creative, to try ideas with that kind of safety net that the parents are there to support if anything doesn't go the way? You're outside selling your perfume, someone comes to us and says, I'm not paying £5 for that. You know, your parents are there to kind of support you in it. And so then what happened from that stage? So you were young, trying out different, not even business ventures, more creativity in terms of developing products. What did you do after that? So you were ended up at university at Warwick, I think you were. Talk us through kind of what led you on that journey rather than into entrepreneurship at an earlier age.
I couldn't wait to go to uni. I needed a change. I wanted a different change of scenery. So I moved up there and I didn't really know what to expect. I'd heard really great things. Everyone who I knew who'd gone to uni had had a great time. And I'm a very sort of sociable, bubbly person. And I'd visited my friends who were older than me in their unis, and I'd loved it. I'd loved the nightlife, the shared accommodation. I'd loved everything about it. So I thought, okay, great, let's go. And then I moved up and I didn't have a great time at all. But this is all coming. There's a reason for all of this. So I was living in a flat with 14 people. And I knew someone else who'd been to Warwick, and he'd told me to apply for this certain accommodation because he said, oh, it's a party accommodation. It's really good. Everyone's really fun. Obviously. So I thought, yeah.
Why not? Yeah.
Decided. And so I went there and I was in a flat. I think there was 14 of us. And I was the only person in the flat who wasn't privately educated. So instantly I was outcasted, really. As being poor and different, and also because I was from Wales, they just absolutely rinsed me.
So was it overtly kind of out, singling you out for those?
Yeah, to my face, yeah.
Wow.
They, you know, I obviously didn't stand for it, but they still, they were really horrible to me for no reason. I was, and so I had quite a negative experience. I struggled to find things in common with people. It's a very different, my school and, you know, my friends, we're all super down to earth and super down to earth, super fun. We have a really good sense of humor, I dare say. And these were just not your kind of people.
Not my
kind of people. And they were so snobby and so rude and told me that the only reason that I'd got into Warwick in the first place is because Warwick because they have all these prestigious unis have quite a high admission of private school kids. They have to have some state school kids. So they said, even though I'd actually got better grades than a lot of them, they said to me, well, you're only here because they're trying to even out their statistics and they have to have some red band comprehensive schools like yours in here to make them look better. So they'd say things like that. And I haven't even got a particularly strong Welsh accent. I mean, you can definitely hear it, but in Pembrokeshire, nobody really has. It's not like South Wales. Nobody really has a particularly strong Welsh accent. And they would make out of my accent, call me poor, say things. I was just completely insane, really.
And how did you handle that situation? It's a tough. You're away from home for the first time.
Yeah.
You're on your own.
Yeah.
And you've got a cohort of people almost singling you out. How did you cope? It's a really difficult situation to be in.
Yeah. Well, I made two really good best friends at uni, Jazz and Emily, and it didn't take long before we realised that the three of us weren't going to stand for the way the rest of them were being. I think there was definitely, I actually, laugh about it now and I look back, but definitely a kind of that gang sort of mentality. And I don't really care for things like that. I don't care if there's 50 people and then just me. If I believe in something or someone's being horrible to me, I'm not going to succumb to it. So the three of us sort of realised that we weren't going to stand for these people being so horrible. So then it kind of became us versus them. And it's quite funny now because some of the people who were like this towards me lived in my flat. They view my LinkedIn now and look at my Instagram, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you'll probably, well, look at what I'm doing now.
Exactly. Yeah.
They told me I'd go nowhere in life. And
it's really visceral stuff, that really cutting stuff to be saying to people. Beyond banter, that is.
Oh, it was, it wasn't like banter at all. It was full, you will go nowhere in life and you are unworthy and this, that and the other. And anyway, so again, what actually happened there was I was living in this flat. I absolutely hated it. I hated them. And I can't even remember what the final thing that happened was. I've had like a few things wrong with me. So I think I actually ended up in hospital again during maybe a half term or something. And then I just said then, I'm not coming back. I'm not going back there. I'm not doing it. And I was really lucky because the head of English, she was called Emma. I don't know if she's still there anymore, but she was like such an amazing woman. And my mum actually rang her one day and just explained the situation and said, you know, this is not acceptable. Lucie's had to deal with this, and that, and the other. And she doesn't want to come back to uni. And Emma was really, well, she was shocked. She said, why didn't you tell me this? You know, we could have done something about it. But of course you don't, do you? You know, nobody wants to kind of tell on someone. So you just deal with it yourself. And then, so she very kindly, they don't normally do this, but there was other things as well, obviously with my health. So there was mitigating circumstances, which meant that they allowed me to take a year out. And I never went back. I stayed home for a few months. And then I decided then that I wanted to do, because I didn't know really much about any of this before I went to uni. So all these people in my flat used to talk about all these internships that they were doing. And I thought, oh, maybe I should do one of them. And I looked into it, and because I'd heard them talking about it and they were saying how competitive they are. And I thought, oh, okay. And then I had a boyfriend at the time, and we decided we could move up to London together, and I could do an internship for a few weeks, and he could obviously work full time, and he'd be earning good money because we were in London. So that's what we did, moved up. My great uncle very kindly let us stay in his flat when he was toing and froing from America. So I did this internship in marketing. I didn't really know anything about marketing until I went to uni. It had never really, and I didn't know.
You would think about it.
No, and I didn't know about the different, you know, when I went to Warwick, that was when I started learning about all these industries that I could work in. And, you know, you could go and work at Google. And then for me, it was like, oh yeah, people work at Google. It's not just a thing. So I had all these big realizations, because it's not like I went to the sort of school where you're having it drummed into you. Oh, you can work at this bank, you can go here, you can do this industry. I was just a rabbit in the headlights. Yeah. So marketing, I thought, yeah, okay, that sounds all right. And I got an internship. I think it was maybe 6 weeks or something. And I did it and I loved it. And then I got another internship, and this was paid. And then I loved that even more. And then my old boss then actually offered me a job very kindly. And so I was working for it. I was doing luxury PR, marketing, digital comms, things like that. And I learned so much about it's not overly relevant to what I do now, but it was just understanding basically how the world worked. September of 2019, I went back to Warwick. And then this is where things get a bit funny, because about 2 months later, I had a careers meeting with a woman, and I don't know what shifted in my brain at this point, but she asked me, what do you want to do? I said, oh, I don't know. Maybe work in marketing, maybe do this, maybe do that. And I was looking at all the different grad schemes that were coming up, and some of them are amazing. You know, the sort of opportunities you get from graduating from somewhere like that is insane. I didn't know if I wanted to move abroad. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I said, she said, oh, well, you know, what do you feel like you want to do? And I said, oh, well, obviously, I used the word obviously. I said, oh, obviously, I want my own business. And she was like, well, what do you mean, obviously? And I said, oh, well, of course, that's what I want to do eventually. Not now, though. And she said, oh, well, what do you mean not now? And I said, well, I'm too young now, maybe when I'm older. And then she was asking me, you know, in the politest way possible, she said, oh, well, do you want to get married and have kids and have a family? I said, oh, and at that point, I said, oh, well, yeah, actually, I do. And she said, okay. She was like, I just want to tell you, she's probably in her early 40s. She said, as mother of two with a mortgage and a dog and a husband, she said, you will never have more time and flexibility, and you'll never be less risk averse than you are now. She said, so if you want to start something, don't wait until you're 35 with a baby, a mortgage. Do it now. And if it doesn't work out, you've lost nothing. And I thought, okay, yeah, good way of looking at it. But I didn't have an idea. I had some ideas, actually, that's a lie, but I didn't have a plan. It wasn't like I was sat on doing one thing. So she really encouraged me, and I can remember that conversation, even though it was, you know, coming on to 5 years ago now. I can remember that conversation I had with her, and I thought, yeah, actually, that makes so much sense. She said, you know, if you've got a kid and mortgage, you're not going to be thinking, oh, let me leave my stable job and start a business. So that was it, and went on with my life. And then COVID happened, and then I moved back to Pembrokeshire. So I had to leave uni because the rent was too expensive, because obviously we'd lost the income because everything was closed. He wasn't working. So moved back to my parents' house, and then this is when hair syrup started.
And then just taking a step back, if that conversation didn't happen with that careers advisor, how different do you think the outcome would have been? Would you have still probably said, you know, hair syrup's going to happen and I'm going to strike on my own? Or do you think you'd had more hesitations and doubts?
Probably more hesitations and doubts. She just widened my perspective on, I had no idea, you know, like I said, some people, they grow up, and this is, you know, what's so good about my parents is I could have done, you know, I had the grades, I could have done pretty much anything I wanted to, but they never pushed me into anything. Some kids, they grow up and their parents say, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. My parents were never like that. I think she had a big key role in taking the leap.
Yeah. And it also sounds like a lot of resilience early doors. As an entrepreneur, you need that in terms of being able to handle rejection, to kind of keep moving, and then resilience for everything that you've had to deal with. Horrible experience early doors in Warwick, and what you're alluding to, some potential health challenges as well, build up quite a lot of resilience quite early on, which is obviously, and we'll go talk on the hair syrup story in a little bit, actually, to deal with that kind of growth as well that quickly. You need an incredible amount of resilience. So yeah, so hair syrup. So talk about, how did that first come about? How did you first come around the idea for hair syrup?
So the idea came to me. I didn't conjure up. I didn't sit around thinking, you know, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's a way of doing it. But when you hear about the great stories of entrepreneurs, it doesn't tend to start with sitting down and writing a list of, how can I make money? What can I do? It tends to be more of a fated thing, dare I say. Just
a problem you want to solve, yeah.
Exactly. Problem that needs a solution. So amidst all of this, working in London, back and forth, I left out a key part, which was my hair. And I've got some photos of it. They're all over my TikTok. People can find them quite easily. And I basically, when I was a teenager, rebel stage, love that. I was obsessed with bleaching my hair, home bleaching, doing anything to it. And I remember I used to go to the same hairdresser as my mum, and every time I'd go there, she would just look at me and she was like, Lucie, you have to stop. Your hair is seriously damaged. Like, what are you doing? But of course you don't listen. And even as I got a bit older and a bit more sensible, I still I was still not looking after my hair. Hair care wasn't really a thing when I was younger, not like it is now. You know, you see kids nowadays and they've got, 5-step routine. I mean, it wasn't like that for me. We used to straighten our hair when our hair was still wet.
Yeah.
So my hair was frazzled, and what I was doing for a while, because obviously naturally my hair's dark, and I think all of this started because some ancient years ago boyfriend had said to me something about blonde girls being prettier than brunettes, and that just set me off then. And I thought, okay, that's it, I'm going to be blonde. Oh, the things we do. So when I got a bit older and realised blonde hair doesn't suit me at all, clashes with my skin tone, I started dyeing my hair dark. I dye it black, I dye it dark brown. So I was just sort of masking the damage. And then it would look all right, but then the colour would fade and it was just awful. And then, or if I just had it freshly kind of blow dried, it would look nice, but it would look nice for about a day. And then my ends were so damaged, they would literally crisp. My hair was just a mess. My scalp was so sore. I've got a really sensitive scalp. So any new products that I have on it, or products I don't agree with, flares it up still now to this day, but worse so back then because I didn't know how to deal with it. So in the mix of all of this, all of these kind of life changes I was going through, I went on a bit of a hair care journey when I can't even remember. It's all a bit of a blur, really. It was so long ago. And people ask me these questions. And like I said, if I was one of those people who'd set out to try and start a business, you document these things. Yeah. I just would never have done that in a million years because I wasn't trying to start a business. I was just
trying to bring my hair back
to life. Yeah. So what I did was I spent a load of money on different products from the high street, from hairdressers, from this and that, a fortune on them. And none of them worked in the way that I wanted them to work. They would work for a day, my hair would look nice and smooth, and the next day it was back to normal. Nothing was giving it that longevity of health that I was looking for. So I basically just did a bit of research into it. I knew nothing about hair care. So I knew nothing about it, but I looked into it. So I remember reading loads of articles, Googling it, looking on YouTube, and I found a couple of different things where people were talking about all of the benefits you can get from natural ingredients. So people were talking about things like mashing avocado and putting it on your hair, and egg yolk and aloe vera. And
you tried any of that stuff?
I tried
egg yolk on the hair?
I tried all of it. And I loved it. I loved all of the sort of natural sides of things. Yeah. And I was actually talking about this to someone yesterday. The most interesting part of it for me was that what I realized when I was doing this was that, I don't know, something just clicked in my brain, because I thought, oh my gosh, every time I buy a bottle of shampoo, I buy it because it says contains, say papaya extract, or contains banana extract, or contains macadamia. But how many of these products actually contain macadamia, or do they just have a fragrance oil in them that makes it smell like that? So I decided to look into natural ingredients, and I read loads of different stuff about aloe vera, argan oil, all of this good stuff. And then I got into essential oils. So this was just a little hobby of mine, an interest I was looking into. And then I decided to research it more and more. And then I thought, this is what I need. I need hair oils with natural ingredients in them. Great. So I looked online and I couldn't find anything within my budget. I actually remember, and I actually know what brand it is. They're a really good brand, don't get me wrong. But it was something like £40 for a bottle of this hair oil. And I thought, I can't do that. That's too much. Especially back then, 5 years ago, it's a bit different now. But back then, I thought, no, I can't spend £40 on 50 ml of hair oil. That's out of my budget. That's too much. So I started looking on YouTube, looking around, cross-referencing some of these ingredients lists. And I basically compiled what I thought these products were made up from, roughly. And I thought, okay.
How hard was that process for you to almost reverse engineer a hair serum? How hard was that process?
It took me a few weeks. and I didn't really know where to start when it came to actually getting the raw materials. So it all took quite a while, but eventually, and of course what I had created was a simplified version of the stuff that you could find on the market. It wasn't quite the same. It was simplified. But I thought it'll maybe do. So I started mixing. I literally just went to a health food shop, went to Amazon, went online. I ordered a load of these raw materials and I started mixing them together, and then I poured them. It's actually really funny because the bottles I sell now, like 100ml bottles, and they've got these little nozzle applicators on them. And the first thing I ever put hair syrup into was, like refillable condiment bottles.
Yeah.
The red ones and the yellow ones. I bought 2 of them. They were from this pound shop. And I filled those up with hair oil. And that is where it started. So they're actually not dissimilar shaped to the bottles that we use now again, which is funny. And then it just literally started mixing. And in my student kitchen.
Pots and pans out.
Measuring jugs. And then Bob's your uncle. I had a little formula. And then over the next, however long this was, year or so, I was adding things, taking things away, researching different ingredients, hearing about this, reading an article about that. Someone was talking about the benefits of strawberry seeds and this, that, and the other, this extract. So I thought, okay, add a bit of this. And then before I knew it, I probably had about 6 different bottles full of these different products. And what I was doing was using some on my scalp, some on my lengths and ends, alternating them. If my hair was greasy one week, I'd use one. If it was feeling more dry another week, I'd use another. So it was basically like this little Walter White's laboratory of hair oil. And there it was. So I thought, okay, perfect. And my hair was transformed beyond recognition. It pretty much doubled in thickness, length, vitality, shine, softness, everything. And I was delighted with it. It was the only thing that actually made a difference to my hair. So then lockdown happened, of course. So we've done a full circle. Lockdown's happened and couldn't afford to stay there. So I thought, right, okay, we'll go home. Went back living with my parents. And one of the first things that people said to me, my brother, his fiance, my parents, my friends, oh my gosh, what have you done to your hair? Because they hadn't seen me for ages. What have you done to your hair? And I said, oh, and it had really started changing in these last maybe 4 or 5 months before lockdown. And I explained to them, I said, oh, look, I've been using these oils and I've made them and blah, blah, blah. And then I said, oh, that's really cool. Can I try some? So my parents tried them, my brother tried them, my fiance tried them, everyone loved them. Wow, it's made my hair so silky, so shiny. What is this? And then that was it. Went about my life until summer of 2020. So went into lockdown, and I think I moved back in February of 2020 when we knew lockdown was sort of happening. And then summer of 2020, I succumbed and downloaded TikTok after swearing I wouldn't for so long. And then I made an account and got into it. And then I saw that hair care was trending on TikTok. So hair care was a big thing during lockdown, obviously. Salons were shut. People were bleaching their own hair, cutting their own hair, having their own mini hair disasters everywhere, left, right, and centre. And then you had the other people who just wanted to take better care of themselves in general, who were getting into it. So I thought, oh, this is cool. I've got something I could say about this because I've had a huge hair transformation. So I thought, okay, I'll make my own video. Never made a TikTok video before. So I did. And it was like a 60-second video of me showing what my hair used to look like, showing what it looks like now, and showing everything I did to get it from A to B. I spoke about the shampoo I was using, little tips and tricks, the foods I was eating. And then I also spoke about in this video the oils. And without even meaning to, I was singing the praises of these hair syrups. I said, oh, they're absolutely amazing. Best thing I've ever done for my hair. Made the biggest difference, blah, blah, blah. And this is how I make them. This is how I apply them. This is that. I was talking about them. And I was being, the best saleswoman ever without even meaning to. And then I posted the video, had about 3 followers, one of whom was my mum. Thought no one would ever see it. It was a bit of fun. I enjoyed making it. It took me a few hours, but it was fine. And then when I woke up, probably the next day, the video had gone viral and had over 600,000 views. And everyone in my comment section was just swooning over this hair oil and this hair transformation. And everyone said, oh my gosh, I need that oil. That's exactly what my hair used to look like. This oil looks incredible. What's your PayPal? Let me send you whatever you want for it. I'll send you 30 quid. Give me a bottle of it. Please, please, I'm begging you.
How does that make you feel? You get up and then all of a sudden you've gone viral. You've had that many people watching you. Talk to me, what does that feel like?
That was crazy because I'd obviously never been viral before.
Is it daunting though? Kind of now exposed to the world, particularly in social media, quite a daunting world.
Yes. I'd had a few friends who'd gone viral before, and you know what it's like when you go viral, you get all these hate comments and stuff. I was quite lucky on that video. I mean, there's nothing much to hate, is there? It was quite an innocent video, but
sometimes people find it.
People find anything. Oh my gosh, especially on TikTok, people find anything to troll you about. So that was insane. I couldn't understand why it happened, but it had. So I was like, wow, my 5 minutes of fame, great. And then I honestly ignored. I had so many comments, you can't reply to them all. So I ignored most of the comments when, people are asking me what I was like, I'm not selling you a bottle of this. Like, what? I couldn't do that. And then I pretty much forgot about it and went on with my life.
For how long?
Months. And then I had a video. No, not video. What I decided to do was, because I was back in uni, it's a big year for me, had a lot of work to do, so I need to delete TikTok because it's addictive and I was spending a lot of time on the app. So funnily enough, I actually ended up deleting the account that this whole video was posted on in the first place. That account no longer exists. And even though I deleted that video, the way that things work on TikTok, people save videos, they get shared around. Even though I had no more active TikTok account, I was still getting messages on my personal social media, so Instagram, Facebook.
People tracked you down.
People literally tracked me down to say, I've seen that video of you. I'm begging you. My hair is frazzled. I'll do anything. Can you give me a bottle of that oil? And a friend of mine at the time was just like, oh, haha, that's so funny. Imagine if you actually did start selling that stuff. I said, oh yeah, can you imagine? He said, well, there's clearly a market for it. People are asking for it. I said, yeah, actually there is. People are asking for it. And the whole reason I had to make these products is because there was nothing else suitable within my budget on the market. There's nothing, that kind of sweet spot, that under £20 that you're willing to part with. There was nothing. So I thought, okay. And then this is the part of entrepreneurship for a lot of people like me that I just don't think a lot of people understand. People say to me, how did you come up with the idea? How did you know? You don't. It's just a feeling. It's not like I browsed a catalogue and then said, landed on hair oils and said, oh yeah, I'm going to do that and hope, I'll make some money off it. It came to me and it stuck. And it was just this niggle in my brain. I thought about it all the time. I could start selling hair oils. And I just thought, I don't know, maybe 4 months later, I thought, I'd come up with the name hair syrup. I knew I wanted it to be yellow. I'd come up with sort of a very, very rogue attempt at branding.
Why yellow? Why did you want it to be yellow? What was the drive?
It just made sense. Oils, syrup, warmth. Yellow just sort of made sense in my brain. And I thought, okay, let's do this. And I know everyone's going to say, oh, well, how? And I just did. I Googled something like, can I sell hair oils? Can I sell handmade hair oils? Looked into the regulations around it. And then I thought, well, actually, people sell cakes from home.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure people can sell hair oils. Of course you can. People sell candles, they sell skincare. So I thought, okay, I can do this.
And presumably you had the formula written down. So there must have been a lot of iterations of the formula to get to that point. Presumably you documented it quite rigorously in terms of the amounts needed in each one?
I did, yeah, in my phone, but for no other reason other than for personal use.
Yeah.
So I found a chemist to work with who was, not to boast, very, very impressed. Couldn't believe that I'd come up with these formulas, tweaked them slightly, but nothing major. And obviously the ones that went on sale were different from...
What tweaks? Why do I need to make tweaks to the formula?
You had to do things like to do with concentration levels.
Okay.
So when you're selling products, you know, if you're using them on yourself, you can do whatever you want basically, but there are concentration regulations and stuff like that, which I obviously didn't know anything about at the time. And then you have to get them tested and approved, make sure they're safe. So I did all of that.
How long does that process normally take? What is the process you have to go through, and how long does it normally take?
I think it took me about a month.
Okay.
It was actually quite complicated. You have to work with the lab. You have to go through, it actually is quite complicated. Even now, I really don't like doing it. And I'm very hands off with it now. But even now, it's not my favorite part of the job because there's a lot of Excel.
Yeah.
There's a lot of forms to fill out. There's a lot of paperwork. You've got to go into portals. You've got to upload information. It's a lot. And I actually, looking back, I don't know how or why, or what drove me, because it was so difficult. Well, I mean, it wasn't like climbing Mount Everest or something difficult, but it was difficult and it was complicated.
And new as well. And
it was new. Yeah. And I had no idea that I was even going to sell a single bottle of this. So I don't know how I had the motivation to do it. I don't know why. I just did.
That's the resilience point, I think, actually, we were talking about earlier. I think it sounds a lot of that you're quite a resilient person. So you're like, you know what? Even though I'm not enjoying it, I'm going to keep going through. I'm going to do this.
Exactly. And I don't know what possessed me to sit at my laptop for 2 hours and figure out how to upload, you know, it's different now slightly, but you had to upload it to all these different portals. When we were part of the EU, there was a Spanish one, and I was like, oh my gosh, couldn't even understand it. I was having to Google translate everything, and I just don't know why I did it, but I did.
You're still at university at this point?
I was a full-time student, yeah. So I was doing my degree. My degree was very, very intense. But again, somehow I just decided to do it. And then the ball was sort of moving. So I had only done, I think it was one formula at this stage. The others came later. The original one was what I did to start. And then I went in. This is the part of the story that everyone finds hilarious. So I had done all of this in secret. I hadn't told anyone, except maybe a partner or something, but I hadn't told anyone else. And then I went into the living room where my parents were sitting, and I said, which is quite funny because I've just been singing their praises as being, you know, the
laid down, not too pushy.
Yeah, secret. Yeah. Exactly. This is the real irony, right? So I went in, and they should really be on a podcast because I'd love to know what was going through their brains when all of this was happening. So I walked in and I said, I can literally remember it to this day. I said, hi. So I've had an idea. And they were like, what? I said, I've had an idea. And they were watching TV, irritated that, you know, I was interrupting their show. And they were like, what is it? And I said, well, I think I'm going to start selling hair oils. And they were like, what? And I said, I'm going to start selling hair oils. You know, I think I'm going to start doing that.
They must have known about your hair oils before. So they must have known you developed this.
Yeah.
Brilliant product work.
Yeah, so they knew my TikTok gone viral. And they said, are you mad? I said, no, why? No, you can't do that. What are you talking about? You're in uni. Don't be ridiculous now, Lucy. And they said to me, you've come this far. But I think because I had a bit of a wild child streak in me, they were a bit worried. This is why they didn't want me to have a gap year. Yeah. They also really didn't want me to take a year out of uni that year when I worked in marketing, because they were just so worried I wouldn't go back. So I guess they weren't overtly pushy, but somewhere inside them they must have.
They were still in an academic route. That was kind of what they had imagined you to go and do.
100%. Yeah. And they were like, what are you doing, Lucy? I remember my dad said to me, you've been studying, because when I studied in school as well, I would study 6-7 hours a day to get my grades. Complete commitment. And yeah, I had fun on the weekends and stuff, but, you know, I was really committed. My dad was like, Lucy, you've worked your whole life. You've spent, I don't know how much, you know, degrees or what. They're like, it cost over
50 grand. Yeah.
No, and my dad said that. He's like, Lucy, you've worked for this degree. You've got these grades. You've wanted to go to Warwick, or like somewhere like Warwick your whole life. What, you're going to jack it all in to start selling some hair oils? You can't risk it. My mum was like, it's not the time to take your eye off the ball. You're in uni. Don't be so silly. This is just, you know, a really ridiculous idea. And I was like, no, it isn't. You know, it's.
How was that conversation turned to an argument, or was it
It turned to an
really against you doing it?
Yeah, lots of tears. And they said, not in our house. You're not doing this in our house. We don't want, what is this? They didn't understand. And it was very new to them. And what they were most worried about was that I was going to get, it's a bit like what I liken it to is if your child in the middle of their GCSE exam said, oh, I've got this new guy that I really like and I want to go and see him.
Yeah.
And you just be like, absolutely not. Why now? Why not 6 months ago? And it was just bad timing. And they thought I was going to be distracted, and they thought I was going to, mess up my degree because they knew I wanted a first. And they were like, how are you going to get a first? And they said to me, how do you think you're going to get a first and get onto these grad schemes? Because sort of grad schemes I was looking at the time, you needed a first.
Yeah.
Or I wanted to do an MA, but I wanted to go to Oxford or Cambridge. Again, you need a first. Not only a first, you need in the 90s. Yeah. So they said, what are you doing? Just focus on your degree. Don't be ridiculous. And they did say to me, you know, you have no idea about how you're going to you've never run a business. What do you know about selling stuff and selling hair oils for a start? You literally have no idea what you're doing. And I was really upset because at the time it was I just wanted a little hobby, something to do. I always worked. I've worked since I was about 13, and I wanted to do something, and I thought it was a good idea. And I was really upset, but so I stormed off into my room and cried by myself and was fuming. But again, I thought, I'll show you. And that sounds so bad, but that is probably quite a lot of my motivation in life, because people are constantly telling me, no, you can't do that. You're not good enough to do that. And I was like, not them telling me I'm not good enough, but, you know, they were like, you can't, can't do that. And I was like, yes, I can. And then there was this tension then between us. So one day, I think it was probably 2 days later, a big package arrives at the door. My mum's like, what is this? Oils, mixing jugs, bottles, printing paper. She was like, no. And I was like, yes, I've ordered it now. You can't do anything. So I sort of snatched it up, ran upstairs. And that's where it started. And they were just watching me every day. They'd walk past me. They do laugh about it now. But they would walk past me and just shake their head, because I would be in the conservatory with my measuring jug, mixing up these oils, hand pour. I have got some, couple of photos, hand pouring them into bottles, had my little tripod, my ring light, and they just walk past me, just shake their head like, what are you doing? And I just cracked on, and I said, no, I'm doing this. I went on TikTok, told the world about my story, my journey, my hair, and I was like, this is me. I think I was 21. I was like, I'm 21. I have these amazing products, and I think you guys should have them too, because they've done this to me and I want them to do this for other people. So the first time I say massive box, it wasn't that massive compared to what we get now, but I ordered 10 of everything. So I ordered 10 mailing boxes from Amazon, 10 bottles, 10 I still do it now, actually, scrunchies.
Yeah.
So I thought, I genuinely was like, I'm going to sell 10.
Yeah.
And if I sell 10, I priced them at, £14. But if I sell 10, oh wow, that's, loads of money.
Result. And so you're selling quickly. Yeah.
Exactly. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll just sell 10. And I launched it, and very quickly I realised I had a bit of a knack for social media marketing, unintentionally, of course. Again, it's not like I'd done it for years and then I thought, oh yeah, I can smash this. It was just a natural thing that I did well at. People really seemed to like me. Loved the product, loved the story, loved the fact that it was all handmade, and small businesses were blowing up on TikTok at this time. So the shop small hashtag was huge. People just loved it. They were buying loads of stuff, online things, online bakeries. Everything was small business. People would love it. You know, they were buying stationery. And then here I was with hair oils. So I remember making my first order, and I remember we actually sent the girl about 2-3 weeks ago. We sent the girl who placed our first ever, her name is also Lucie, and she placed she was the first ever hair service customer. So we sent her a package with all of the new updated, because we've just rebranded. So we sent her a package the other day of the updated branding with all the products, with some of the products that she'd liked. And so she ordered, and I'd done everything myself. So I'd literally hand poured the oil into a bottle, printed off a little label, stuck it to the front with Pritt stick, stuck it to the back with Pritt stick. A few months later, I upgraded to, like double-sided printer paper. But I didn't have that. I just had normal paper cut with scissors.
Stuck on.
I don't even know how she bought it. Fair play to her. It's sort of thing you get at, a real arts and crafts market, I guess.
You said a really interesting point, actually, that you had a natural tact for social media marketing, and you've now got the hindsight kind of experience of what, and we'll touch on a bit later what that is, but what is it in the early days that you were doing that you think really resonated then with your audience?
I think I was just being me. I was just really authentic. I would talk about the highs and lows of running a business. People could relate to me. I spoke a lot about the fact that I was a student. I was doing my degree. I was selling these hair oils. I spoke a lot about my hair transformation, which people could relate to. And it was real. I was not just some big company or some person who was, drop shipping something to try and make a quick buck and, hopped on some sort of trend or something. It wasn't like that. This was just this genuine, real story of, here I am. These are the products that I made myself by hand. And now I want you guys, they knew that my genuine only motive here was to share what I'd created with them and hopefully give them the same experience with it as what I'd had. That was genuinely my only motive. And I think people really liked that.
And that's what you've learned, that actually being authentic then to your audience actually gains you more traction. And if it is just around, I just want to sell you this product, it's actually sharing insights and being authentic is the best way to resonate on social media.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you see people, I think people have clocked on to that nowadays. You've actually got to be careful, but because everyone's sort of trying to do it and you don't really know who's genuine and who's not. But back when I was first doing it, and there's lots of other brands like mine who started at the same time, and we've all got that exact same energy about us, because it was just, no one had any idea what they were doing. It's different now. There's blueprints for how to make a brand go viral on TikTok, how to sell your products on TikTok. We didn't have any of that. We created that. We were the trailblazers in it. And we did that just by being ourselves and by connecting with audiences and being honest and replying to comments, whether they were negative, positive, taking everything on board, being really agile, really responsive, and just inviting our audience in to be on this journey with us. Like I said, you see a lot of people do it now, but a lot of the time they're doing it because they know it's a good marketing spin. It was never a marketing spin for us. It was, this is me.
This is who we are, yeah.
I'm in my conservatory. I'm selling these oils and come along. So yeah, that's how I would say it started taking off, was just through me being me, I suppose.
So that first initial 10 of everything that you ordered, how quickly did you sell through all those 10?
I honestly can't remember. Again, sort of thing that if I'd known that it was going to turn into anything, I probably would have kept track on. Maybe 3 weeks or something.
Okay. So it wasn't kind of instant up and it was sold?
No, I don't think so. Maybe 2-3 weeks. And then I thought, oh, I'm going to have to order. So basically what I did is I made 10. And I had, because when you're working with formulas, you obviously have to, and the way that I'd structured it was, I was selling them in 100 milliliter bottles and it was per litre. So I was like, okay. And then I had them sitting in this little cute little box trinkety thing that I bought. And then I realised, oh my gosh, we're down to the last 2 or something. So I was like, okay, better go back and order some more stuff. Ordered another 10 and then they sold. And then I remember the first time, probably about 3 months in, when I ordered 50 of everything.
Huge order.
Yeah, and like at the time, that was a really big deal. And I remember thinking, oh, I don't know, will I sell these? And I thought, oh, worst case scenario, if I don't, it's, it is only a bit of cardboard. Like, I'll just use them for something else. And yeah, so I don't know, maybe 2-3 weeks. And then then I had to make some more.
And so what point did it really start kind of ramping up? Because you've got some insane growth in your business. At what point did you start to really notice that growth and thinking, I'm on to something here?
I think towards the end of 2021. Yeah. People get really annoyed at me then when I talk about this, because I actually had an interview a couple of weeks ago, and when I was talking about my figures, they said, so at what point did you think, oh, this is a business? I was like, oh, maybe quite recently, because it was all, even when from 2021 to 2022, I made 140K from just my parents' conservatory, and that is a lot of money.
Yeah.
In 1 year. But at the time, it just didn't feel like that. It felt like a little thing that I was doing. And I don't think I even understood how much money I was making and what was even going on. I wasn't spending anything, because apart from on the products, all my marketing was free. I was just making some TikToks, making some Instagram posts. The product was selling itself. But it was at this point, sort of end of 2021, so probably when I've been going about a year, people started to talk about it, and people started to say, what is this stuff? I had people off TV shows using it.
Yeah.
I never sent any. Well, I maybe gifted some things to some big TikTok influencers who needed them. So what I did, which was actually quite clever, and I still do now, is if someone came on and made a video about them saying, I got really bad dandruff, or I've got really bad this, I'd comment and I'd say, oh, let me send you a bottle of this. And then that would kind of get traction, and I'd send it to them. But organically, people just started using my products and then making content about them, because the products, it's funny because now in the last however long, I've had some quite rigorous clinical trials done on them.
Yeah.
And as expected, the results are some of the best they've ever seen. The products are amazing. So it was unsurprising that people would share their results. I mean, if I used a really good skincare or haircare product, I would probably make a TikTok about it as well and say, oh my gosh, this is the best, £10 I've ever bought. Look what this moisturizer's done, or whatever it is. And that's what people were doing. They were saying, this brand is on TikTok. It's called Hair Syrup. It's a small business. The girl's lovely. The brand's so cute. She sends scrunchies. And I ordered this, didn't know what would happen. And now my hair's grown 2 inches. I had a bald spot, and now this has happened. My hair was really greasy. My scalp was sore. So people were just giving these honest testimonies, and it was just spreading like wildfire, and people were just loving it. And then 2022 or 2020, end of 2021, I got approached by a retailer. And this was when my parents were actually sick of me, because they said to me, I remember completely blagging this Zoom call I had with them. I was using words like, oh yeah, the team and I, no team, no, just I, no idea what I was doing. They were talking about MOQs and POs, and I was Googling, what is a PO, what is an MOQ, literally with my phone. Yes, oh no, that's fine, I'll get the team onto that. Complete lie, I didn't have any team. And then it was the first email I got from them, and they mentioned something about a Euro palette. I was like, yeah, I've got Euro palettes. Didn't even know what that was. So I had to Google Euro palette. And then I was like, okay. And I was like, oh, how am I going to get a Euro palette? I think it was December at this point. How am I going to get, no, it wouldn't have been December, it would have been autumn. I was like, how am I going to get a palette inside my parents' house, stack it with my products, get it back out, drag it down the driveway? And my mum was like, no, this is where I draw a line.
Go too far. Pallets in the house.
Pallets in the house? No. Oh, fine. So I was like, she's like, you're not doing it. We're not, this is just, you're just being ridiculous now.
So, you don't say who the retailer was, but it's a large retailer. So even at that point, you've been approached by this retailer, wants your products, and your mum was still like, no.
It was just the palette thing.
Okay.
Because...
Wasn't the idea of it.
No, it was the palette. And she's like, Lucie, this is completely ridiculous. You have to get a premises for this now. You have to get yourself a space that's not my house or my conservatory. So lucky she did, really, because then I went on the hunt for a warehouse, I suppose. But where we live is so rural. There's no, if you're somewhere like here or Wolverhampton, there's so many warehouses, so many industrial spaces to rent. None of that in Pembrokeshire. I didn't know where to start. I asked around locally. I didn't have a clue what I was looking for, what I was doing. And I almost gave up after about 3 months of solid searching. I almost gave up. I'd been thinking about it for a while, and my mum had sort of confirmed it when she'd said, we're not shipping pallets out from the house, because it was just like completely ridiculous, which is fair enough. To be honest, it's fair enough. But I almost gave up on it. And then I went into Fishguard one day, which is one of my local towns. I was actually going to the post office to drop off my parcels by hand, which is what I used to have to do.
Yeah.
And I saw a sign that says "To Let" on this old charity shop. And I thought, oh my gosh, call this number. So I called the number. It was glowing, this building, even though it was, oh wow, it was in a right state. But it just glowed to me.
Yeah.
And I thought, yes. And I rang the guy and the landlord, and he was a lovely bloke, really interested in what I was doing, serial entrepreneur. He's actually sold that building now, but really interested in what I was doing, really keen to help me and give me a bit of a leg up.
Yeah.
So I was like, when can I take it? When can I take it? Again, 22 at this point. Got sent a lease. My brother's fiance is a solicitor. And she almost went into hysterics to find that I'd signed a 3-year lease without reading the contract properly first. But that's what you do, isn't it? And I was
like just impatience. You wanted to get going. This is a long document. I'm sure.
I'm not reading that. If it was now, I'd have just straight into ChatGPT, summarise, but not back then. So I didn't even really read it, to be honest. I just thought, yeah, it'd be fine. And signed it. Let's go, let's do it. Got in there. Place needed renovating. So that needed sorting.
Did yourself? You in there?
Well, the guy I was with at the time was a builder, so he did it. He did a lot of the stuff in there, which was really handy. So it needed painting, new floors, a postage estate. It needed a real clean, and it was basically like a bit of an abandoned building, to be honest. But and then we got a kitchen fitted and stuff like that, and it was fine. It was all right when we got in there.
At the time, just yourself in that building? Do you have staff at that point? Because you say it was 144,000 sales is what you ended on. Was that? Yeah.
So just me. Obviously, my mum was helping with my accounts at this point, and that guy who I was with was giving me a hand with a couple of different, more of the kind of, like, for example, renovating the building. He had a full-time job though, so this was all part-time. And so, it was just me. And then once the building was ready to move into, in the meantime, I was hiring. And then I had 2 girls who applied for the role. And then...
What was the role? What was the first role you hired in?
Part-time order pick and packer.
Okay.
Yeah. So they were just to pack the orders.
Yeah.
And I thought it made logical sense that if they were doing that, I could focus more on the marketing and the wholesales, which I had to do. So they'd be doing little things like filling the bottles with the oil, because we were getting the oil in bulk at this point. So we weren't making it by hand. We were ordering drums of it pre-mixed from manufacturer, arriving and then putting in the bottles. So I did everything. I did the customer service, the social media, the order packing, ordering the stock, ordering the bottles. Oh my gosh, I don't even know how I did it, but I did.
And how did you go find that manufacturer? You'd moved on now from mixing the conservatory to now you found a manufacturer. At what point did you look for manufacturing? How did you find one?
Oh my God, honestly, I don't even know. I think I just Googled. I think I read every page on Google until I found this one place. I mean, most of them just wouldn't touch me with a 10-foot barge pole, because they're like, I wanted my my initial order was tiny.
Yeah.
And I was a nobody. You know, they want big clients, and I was a nobody. So most of them just didn't reply to my email, told me no on the phone, so I kept going. And then I found this company and in the Northeast, and they didn't deliver the best. We had quite a few problems with them, hold-ups, delays, this, that and the other. We've got, different ones now, but they were a start.
Yeah.
And sent us the product, and then that's how we did it. And that was a whole different kettle of fish, because I just had no idea, like, how do you know how to deal with a cosmetic manufacturer? Yeah. I just didn't know, but I just used my common sense to sort of wing it, to be honest. And then I had 2 girls, both of whom were part-time. I mean, I'd done some interviewing for my boss before, but I really didn't know what I was looking for or what I want. I know exactly what I want and what I'm looking for in staff now. I didn't really know at that time. And then one of the girls...
I think that's an interesting point. What do you look for now? So you've got the benefit of experience of hiring, and what is it you look for to bring into your team?
Trust, commitment, loyalty, honesty, more so that side of things, rather than, you have to have this fancy degree or 10 years of experience. Someone I trust, someone who's respectful, gets along with me, and someone who's there because they want to have a nice job and want to have a nice time and grow with the brand and don't have any other ulterior motives. And people who are just genuine, nice people, because I'm a very relaxed boss, and anyone will tell you that. So for me, I never want to not be like that. So people say to me over the years, you need to toughen up, you need to be more like this. And I'm saying, well, no, I just need to get staff who aren't going to take the mick, which is what I've got now, which is fantastic. And one of the girls both of the girls who worked for me at the start were brilliant. One of them... what's she doing now? She's actually got a baby now, so she ended up moving on. But the other one, she went into a completely different sector and ended up, she's like got a little one now and stuff. But Libby, the other girl, she's my first member of staff, and she's still with me now.
That's great.
She just knows everything about the business. Nothing goes unnoticed with her. Another thing, good in staff, good attention to detail. Libby cares. It's such a big thing. You guys probably see it here. It's really hard to find. It can be quite hard to find, but people who actually care about the brand, they never care about it as much as you do as the owner, but who care about it, and want to see things go well. So that was mad. Hiring her. She was great. She lived up the road it was perfect. She lived up the road from the warehouse, and she was 1,000,000% trustworthy. She could come and go, and I trusted her to lock up, and she was just great. And she set a very high bar for what I expect then from the rest of my staff.
Not really a bad thing, though. It's a good thing actually having that high bar set from day one. And because this is the year it really took off, didn't it? This is the year that you had some kind of hyper growth. And so how quickly did that happen after you moved into your premises? Did you start seeing that type of growth? And the contextual numbers as well, actually, in terms of how much you ended up on the first or second year.
So I think if we'd moved into that, if that building had taken, if it had taken us an extra week to move in, the business probably would have collapsed, because it was on the brink of, when a business grows too quickly, it's obviously quite well, everyone knows, it can break it.
Yeah.
And we were on the brink of the business was just going to fall apart, because there was so much going on, and it was just an absolute nightmare, to be honest.
And so what was falling apart at that point? You mentioned you were a week away from potentially it going in a different direction. What were you experiencing?
Well, we had these outstanding wholesale agreements. We were experiencing issues around customer retention. We felt like we needed to, basically, if we hadn't got into that premises, the business wouldn't have been able to keep up with demand, and it just wouldn't have worked. We had to grow with the demand. Every week I was getting 10,000 followers. My videos were going viral, and operationally, we were so unimaginably ill-equipped for that. And I did not want to be in a position where people were ordering with me and their orders weren't being sent out and all of that awful stuff, because you see that happen to brands all the time, and it can be really damaging. I've actually had that with a brand where they went really viral. I ordered from them. My order never turned up. Took 3 months to get a refund. Not their fault at all, because I totally understand the logistics behind it. However, haven't reordered because, and I'm only like reflecting on that now, but as a customer experience, even though I understand why, it's not a great experience. And I was like, that's what's going to start happening. So we were in this unit. We could fulfill, I've got a photo of myself actually with my first order for my wholesaler. And then once we were with that wholesaler, then I think they ordered 500 to start, which was just insane. Huge amount of product. And then we got staff then. And then what happened then? I think I got another member of staff. And then I was finally able to do the unthinkable, which is actually not be in the office 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Not packing orders.
Orders. So I was actually able to take a little bit of a step away from it. I started doing things like live streaming on TikTok. So, sorry, my throat is blocked. I started doing things like live streaming on TikTok as well to really build up that community between myself and the customer. And this is when it sort of shifted from being me running this business to me being the hair syrup lady, which is what, or the hair syrup girl, which is what everyone refers to me now. And I started to develop this really sort of intimate relationship between myself and my followers. People just loved talking to me, chatting to me, asking me questions. So that's kind of what I did. So we're in 2022 now. And I'd had a really difficult, in loads of different ways, very, very difficult few years. So a lot of things were going on in my life, lot of things. And then towards the end of 2022, then the business really ramped up, and we went from 144,000 the previous year to 1.4 million. So we had a 967% revenue growth it was actually less than 12 months, and all just peaked in Q4.
And was there like an inflection point? Was there a certain bit of content you put out there? Or was this just all the content compounding on each other and just accelerating the business forward?
It was the launch of TikTok Shop. So TikTok Shop became a real big thing towards the sort of 2022 mid to end. And everyone was just going absolutely crazy for it, basically. So that's where 49% of my revenue came from, was TikTok Shop. When people were able to buy via a video or buy via a live stream, that just changed the game for me, because it was such an easy shopping experience. Like, I use TikTok Shop all the time now, and I love seeing someone talk about a dress in a video, and then you can click on the bottom left, click your Apple Pay, and you've just bought it whilst the video is still playing in the background. It's such an immersive, easy shopping experience. You don't have to click on a link and go to the bio and do this and do that. So that's just what catapulted it. I was going on live all the time. My content was just popping off. I started to really understand what people liked on TikTok, what they didn't, and just really cemented myself as I got a TikTok account manager. Like I said, just cemented myself as one of the big brands on there, the kind of big players of the small business scene. And then 2023 to 2024, this is a big one though, because we went from 1.4 million. Was it 1.4 million? In 2024, we did 4.5 million. So that was another huge growth.
And what's it like at the time working in that business? Because that is insane growth numbers to be going through. What did it feel like at the time? Did it feel manic? Did it feel controlled? What did it feel like?
It was hell. I lost 3 stone in the space of a couple of months. My hair was falling out. I was very, it was hell, to be honest. And I never, at the time, I didn't have anyone around me who really understood what's going on, because no one had ever done anything like this or experienced anything like this before.
And so
And
who was
then-
the business at the time? Was it kind of yourself still leading on a lot from the marketing activities and business activities, and then just the team doing the pick and packing? Or you started to bulk out that team now with other people to support you in the more kind of forward-facing business activities?
So it's just me doing forward-facing. We had quite a lot of people actually at that time. There was quite a lot of us, people doing the filling, pick and packing, me doing pretty much everything else. But it was awful, to be honest.
Yeah.
It was so hard. And I'm actually still physically, emotionally recovering from what a difficult period that was. And then I met my accountant then in 2023, early 2023. I changed accountant. And when he looked at my books and showed me a scale of what had happened, it was the strangest experience, because I looked at, well, you can imagine the scale from 140k to 4.5 million in 2 years. And I thought, that is my stress level. That graph is my anxiety, my stress, my panic, my lack of sleep, my insomnia, just up, 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 up. And I was like, yes, oh my God, that's what's happened. He was like, yeah, like, are you okay? And he seriously said to me, how have you done this? I don't know. And people don't understand what it's like as well, growing a business like that in Pembrokeshire. Like, we don't have people to call on or to help, or we don't have any. It's a really difficult place to grow a business compared to elsewhere, and I know that for a fact because I've done it. And my accountant was seriously like, are you okay? Because what you've done here is pretty unheard of. And like I said, it's not like we're a drop shipping business where we order stock in and then we sell it. We were hand pouring these products, hand labeling them. We had to do forecasting. So difficult to forecast anything, because overnight you could click your fingers and a video and a product that had been selling, had been accounting for 4% of my sales. It goes up by 700% because the video's gone viral. You can't control that. And there we were. So we were basically just like these kind of headless chickens at the time, running around fighting fires. And I didn't even know how much money I was making. So I missed that milestone of when I hit £1 million because
you're just in there doing it. And so did you have a customer service team? Kind of how broad was you doing all the customer service, marketing? Obviously you had an accountant at the time helping at least the finance, but you still got to get involved there. And I guess the question is kind of, what stops you taking a step back and going, right, I now need to hire? Because most people on this kind of trajectory would kind of step back and go, right, I'm a X many thousand orders going, well, we got tens of thousands of orders, I imagine everything going every single month. I need customer service, I'm going to need an operations manager. What do you think stopped you taking a step back and looking at the business in that way?
Because it's really difficult to hire people where we live.
And that's the crux of it, on the location where you are.
I was lucky because, again, trust and stuff is a really big thing for me. I've made a couple of mistakes, but the two people who were my kind of main, so my mum was doing a lot of the financy stuff, PAYE, invoicing, bookkeeping. She was also helping with the retailers, but then I was actually really lucky because my operations manager was someone who I could really, really trust and rely on. But it was out of both of our debts. You know, he'd never had any experience working in any sort of e-commerce in his life, and we were just doing our best. We didn't know what any of this stuff meant, and suddenly you had to learn how to send out wholesalers and how to write a packing list, and we were just winging it, both of us. And like I said, I was lucky because I had people who I could trust and I could rely on, and I could call when things went wrong. I mean, things go wrong all the time now, but my God, back then things went really wrong, and I was really going through it, and I needed people who could help me, calm me down. And
what were those challenges that were going really wrong? So what was one of the biggest ones at that period of time that you're thinking, this is just getting too much?
Oh my God. one of the worst things that happened was we had a load of stock arrive to us. So our products are waterless. They don't contain any preservatives because they don't have any water in them. And this manufacturer that we'd used, we'd spent, oh my God, so much money with them. And all this stock turned up. And somehow in their filling process, it had been contaminated with water. And of course, it has no preservatives in it. So we just had all of these drums of oil with water droplets in it that were obviously going to go mouldy. So we had no stock. I didn't know how to... They were accusing me of contaminating it myself. Well, once it's out of our warehouse, and it was like probably about 50, 60 grand order. Well, once it's out of our warehouse, it's, you must have done something to it. So I was having to have these arguments with this... Oh, I can actually remember her face now. You've done this. I said, why would I do this? I was like, I'm still going to be sold out for 2 weeks. I need this product. Why would I do this? And anyway, eventually we got the product sent back, got a refund, got them remade. But we were out of stock for ages. And at this point, I had staff who were relying on me for income, but we weren't making any money because we weren't having any orders, because we couldn't take orders, because we had no stock.
Yeah.
That was, and just things went wrong all the time.
Yeah.
It's
huge just for you doing that on your own as well.
Yeah.
It's hugely stressful.
Exactly.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Problems with the building.
Yeah.
We'd often have problems with the building. And just, people being horrible online. Problems with Royal Mail. And they didn't like, we actually still have it to this day because it's so, we don't have businesses that ship out like we do from Pembrokeshire. So even, local delivery drivers, rather than being supportive and championing, oh, this is so great, we've got this cool business, they were effing and blinding. Oh, look at what are all these bags? How am I supposed to take all these bags? My van's not big enough. And I was like, oh, well, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, what? So just a lot of negativity, a lot of people just making my life really difficult.
Would you ever consider moving the business? It sounds actually there might be an inflection point at some point where actually the location might hold the business back from that next stage of growth.
I don't think we'll move it, but I think at some point we're going to need a second HQ.
Yeah.
So I don't think it'd be about moving, but Pembrokeshire's obviously the business roots are in Pembrokeshire. But yeah, it hasn't been an easy place. I haven't had all that much. I mean, don't get me wrong, a lot of people are absolutely amazing and wonderful about it there. But yeah, lots of people, even now, who, believe it or not, the size that it is, people actually take the mick out of hair syrup there. It's a very small town, which again is absolutely insane considering where we are with it. We sell it in Boots, but they take the mick out of it. And yeah, so I don't know. And sometimes it just gets a bit much, feuding with neighbours and stuff over parking spaces and this, that and the other. It's not where my energy needs to be.
Yeah. Especially when you've got everything else going alongside it as well. Last thing you want is neighbours and fighting with them.
Yeah, and neighbours shouting at us because there's a delivery truck and, it's just, I just don't need that sort of stuff. So I travel a lot with work, most weeks actually. So I'll definitely need to relocate myself just because of all the opportunities that I get. And it's too expensive. Honestly, I'd love to live in Pembrokeshire, but the train costs me hundreds of pounds to get from there, Pembrokeshire to London. And I bring my social media manager with me. Hotels, decent hotels, they're 200-300 quid a night.
Yeah.
So it's actually cheaper for me to get a second base somewhere. But we spend a lot of time up north as well. A lot of my manufacturers there, my suppliers, a lot of the agencies I work with in Manchester area. So I don't know, but the business will always keep well, I can't see us ever moving the big warehouse from there. We've got a huge place, but I think we'll end up opening a second one depending how big the business gets.
You said something around you being able to find what worked on TikTok for your audience. What was it? What was that kind of light bulb moment when actually you started to feel like the content was really resonating, or what you were doing on TikTok was really resonating?
I think I found this almost like content pillar sweet spot between humorous content, clickbait, light, mild controversy, talking about behind the scenes, humor, memes, relatable stuff. When the brand developed its personality, we're a very raw, authentic. We're not one of these highly polished, curated brands that you're going to look on their Instagram or look on their social media and everything's got this kind of glossy aesthetic glaze to it that makes everything look amazing. You know, we're raw, we're honest, and that is kind of symbolic of the products as well. You know, we're sort of no BS, and that's what the products are like. They don't have any nasties in them, and they're there to work. You know, we're not there to, you know, you see some of these, I've always laughed at hair care adverts because it's, you know, they're selling the shampoo, and if you know about formulations, you're looking at the ingredients thinking this is absolute rubbish, but yet you have the most beautiful woman with a luscious, long, thick hair. I use this shampoo and this is how my hair looks. And you're thinking, what? No. But we do the opposite. So we show a lot of things, you know, the kind of the uglier side of, you know, the non-aesthetic side of things. So I talk a lot, you know, I suffer with a lot of scalp irritation, scalp issues. I talk about it all the time on my TikTok. I'm not like, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. I'm not like that at all. And we try to normalize things as well as offering people solutions potentially to stuff. So yeah, that's kind of what works. Just doing me, being honest, talking about my brand, talking about opportunities, things that have gone wrong, things that have gone right, and yeah, all the rest of it.
And I'm going to move on to Dragon's Den, actually, because I think there's a really interesting story in that. So how did that happen? Did they approach you? Did you approach Dragon's Den? How did you end up on the show?
So Dragon's Den approached me. I wouldn't have applied myself. A lot of people have said to me since going on Dragon's Den, oh my gosh, you went on Dragon's Den and everything's gone amazingly for you. I'm going to go on Dragon's Den. And I'm like, whoa, let's sign a waiver here. Actually, because it's a big risk going on TV.
Well, you're doing great beforehand. You didn't need Dragon's Den.
So, exactly. And it's a big risk when you go on telly. I've got friends who work in TV, and I've been told a few times, when you go on telly, you're putting your reputation in the hands of the producers and the editors, and they can do what they want. They own you. So it's never really appealed to me. I mean, it's a dream, isn't it? Oh, I'd love to go on Dragon's Den. But when I got serious about it, I thought, nah, I wouldn't. And then when they approached me, this is what I mean about things being sort of fated. And when they approached me at the beginning, I thought, no. And then I thought, actually, because of the way I am on social media, whatever happens on Dragon's Den, I can make a little bit of a... I can
use what happens to your advantage.
I can use what happens to my advantage. So no matter what happens, I will put a spin on it, and I will create some really good content, because that's obviously where my skill lies. It's content creation. So I didn't realize at the time, and I don't even know if it occurred to me, but what could make for better content than being rejected by all 6 dragons and almost having this really controversial snaky offer given to me that divided the whole of the country, who couldn't agree whether it was a good offer, a bad offer, this or that. So I'll be honest, when I went on and I agreed to go on, I didn't have all that much notice to prepare. I watched a lot of episodes, so I thought I knew enough. They didn't even show you the complicated questions they asked me were insane.
And what are they? What has happened? Because I know it's heavily edited. You've got to a 10, 12-minute segment. Obviously, you must be in there for much longer than that period of time. I imagine maybe an hour, probably more. What is those complicated questions? How do they really get under the skin of the business, and what do they ask?
I was in there for 3.5 hours, standing on the stage, talking to them. And they asked me about loads of stuff, really detailed questions. And I use a lot of agencies. So they were asking me questions about my email marketing that there's just no way I would know the answer to that, because I outsource it. that's just one example. I spoke to them a lot about I'm glad they didn't show any of this, but there was that whole really famous part about the dividends.
Yeah.
But it was actually, that was related to my personal finances. And I spoke to them a lot about that. They gave me some really, really good advice. They actually advised me not to buy a building because I was going to buy a building because we couldn't find a building big enough to house hair syrup.
Yeah.
And then 2 days before I signed the deal to buy a plot of land for £1 million, my old director had an email from someone saying, this unit has just come up. They want to swap in the next 2 weeks. Do you want to do it 2 days before? And the Dragons had told me not to do it. And
so it's like fate not to do it with that advice and they come up.
So I didn't. And we had a difficult year last year financially because of various people. And it would have been catastrophic for the brand if I'd done that. Probably would have closed me down. So they advised me not to. They gave me loads of other advice. They were just it's been invaluable really for me as an entrepreneur to talk to them, listen to them and have them tell me stuff about my future, my business. They made it look really negative on the TV, but honestly, it was the best experience I've ever had.
That's what I was just to ask, because actually it did come across a relatively negative experience now, which obviously from your friends saying on television, that's what the editors and producers were once going to come across. But it wasn't. It was actually quite a positive experience. They were quite friendly the whole time, wanted to impart some kind of knowledge and experience on to you to support you. And so what were some of those key takeaways from the bits that maybe weren't put in the edit that they passed on to you that you've really gone, actually, that is a light bulb moment for me?
Yeah, I mean, when my old English teacher said to me before a quote, which is something like happiness reads white. And it basically means that nobody, I think that's the quote anyway, it basically means that nobody wants to see the good stuff. Yeah. And I'd been prepared for that. And it was such a shame because they were people genuinely watched that episode of me on Dragon's Den, even though I've got a 6.5 million turnover and, my figures are all pretty good and their business is in a, touch wood, like pretty healthy place. And people genuinely who watch that 15 minutes of me think I'm completely stupid and that my business is rubbish and I have no idea what I'm doing. And how anyone can think that you can run a £6.5 million business pretty much single-handedly and be...
and not know what you're doing. Exactly. That's true.
But that's what it is, isn't it? It's for TV. It's to entertain people. But it was a shame that they didn't show, like I said, but it would have been boring if they had. Yeah. But they were actually really lovely and they gave me some really solid advice around, because international markets is obviously where I'm looking this year. I've done it in the UK. We're one of the biggest sellers on TikTok Shop in hair care. We're in Boots. What more can I do? So they gave me some really great pointers around international expansion. I'm still in touch with a couple of them. So if ever I need anything, I can always reach out and see what they think.
What was that advice on international expansion? What did they share with you?
They explained to me how expensive it is. And they explained to me different routes to market. So different ways that you can access these markets and the risks and the benefits, the pros and cons. They spoke to me about distributors, about working B2B, and just about how expensive it is and how to identify which markets you might work in. And they were just super knowledgeable. And they told me that I needed to hire, and they told me that I needed to make a few big hires. I've hired a COO who's starting at the beginning of April, and I'm going to be looking at taking on a head of sales or commercial, that kind of area. And they got it very clear in my head of when I am seeking investment, which I will be, of course, at some point, who I should look for. And it's really funny because since then, I've been approached by several investors, one of whom works within and I can't say who, obviously, but is within the hair care industry. So it would be someone like that
Yeah.
that I would take investment from, who could take my business from, 6 mil to 60 mil, which is obviously what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And they just explained to me a lot about, because I went in there, I had a hard year last year, and I'm not trying to make anyone feel sorry for me, because why would they? I know I'm in a positive position, but I had a really hard year last year. And I was defeated when I went on Dragon's Den. I was done with everything. I love hair syrup and I love everything about it. But I had been ground down to a point through things that people had done, to a point where I hated. I wanted to leave.
Yeah.
I say every day, I can't do this anymore. I literally can't do this anymore. And when I went on Dragon's Den, they basically got clear in my head what I'm doing it for. They said, Lucie, you need to know, what is your plan here? Do you want to exit? How are you going to do this? You need a clear goal, because you're just going and going and going. But what do you want to do with this? And I stood there, I said, I don't know. They're like, well, you got to know. You've got to get to know. You've got to get a plan. You need an ambition here. They said, because you're just shooting for the stars, but you're shooting too wide and you're going to miss. You need to tunnel vision. So I was like, okay. So I have now got a better idea of where I want the brand to go, what I see happening with it. And sorry, what was the question?
I mean, you've pretty much gone around. It's fine, I think, in terms of what the big lessons they kind of gave you in there.
Lessons.
And actually, I think that's a really interesting point of getting your vision clear on what you want the business and what you want out of the business and where you want it to go. Because actually, I can quite clearly see that if you're in the day-to-day so much, you just don't even have the time to think about taking a step back and thinking, where do I want this business to end up?
I said that to them when I was on stage. I said, they were like, how much do you want to sell it for? As funny enough, Peter Jones said to me, oh, if I offered you 10 million for it, would you take it? And I said, I wish they'd shown this, but I said no. And he was like, what do you mean no? And I was like, no, I'm not selling it for 10 mil. And
it's not a fair valuation, I think, on the property.
Yeah, I know. I said no. And he was laughing, and he's like, oh, they could obviously see something in me, that they just knew she wants to.
And so now you've got that vision. So now you understand where you want the brand to take, and actually an interesting point that you want to take kind of investment.
I think I'll need to.
Yeah. And actually, I think having that sector-specific investment, particularly e-com sector-specific, helps with people that have gone on this journey multiple times and understand what that path looks like. And what does the journey look like now? Does it look like, 5 years, investment, see where it can go? Do you think there's just kind of 10, 15 years? Where do you want this brand to now get to a bit more clarity from having that experience in Dragon's Den?
Yeah, so like I said, they got everything pretty clear in my head. And they also made me, I know that a lot of people, when Deborah made those comments, everyone was like, oh, she's so mean. But actually, she was just saying to me, she was like, Lucie, you need to carry yourself and hold your head high. Look what you've done. You are a founder. You're an entrepreneur. Start acting like one. And I actually turned around to all of them when I was on stage and I said, how can I think about exit and this and that when last week I was having to pack orders because we went so viral and I had 3 staff off sick because I was in the business. Now I'm on the business. And they were like, oh, okay, I get it. Because I think they couldn't understand that with a £6.5 million business that I would be packing the orders. I was like, no, I cleaned the kitchen in the warehouse last week. We had a problem with our alarm, so I was there till 8 o'clock at night. I'm doing these things. I don't have anyone to sort the stuff out for me. They were like, right, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to get someone to manage that warehouse, you need to get out there, you need to network. So for the foreseeable, I get advice thrown at me left, right, centre, you can probably imagine.
Yeah.
And everyone's, oh, do this, do that. But someone said to me the other week to just keep doing what I'm doing.
It's working.
And he was like, you need to be careful listening to all these people who are telling you, and especially when they're trying to sell you something, because they all, a lot of the time they are. And he's just like, you're doing amazing. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I think that's the first time anyone's ever said that to me without offering me some sort of, you need to make this type of diagram and a forecast for this and a business 5-year plan. And I, whoa, okay. But he was like, just keep doing what you're doing. You're smashing it. The business is going to grow. Keep being the face of it. Keep running the front and center of it. You're doing amazing. So I think I'll probably just keep going as I'm going. But we're about to launch on TikTok Shop Ireland. We want to launch TikTok Shop USA. And the American market for me is where it's at. And everyone says, why are British people so obsessed? Like, there's loads of other markets apart from America. But my brand would work so well in the US.
Yeah.
And I know it would. So that's my end goal.
And it's a natural step. The reason why a lot of British brands should go over there, because actually it's, as a market, very similar to the UK. And it's the largest e-commerce market, or second largest, but probably the most penetrated in the world. So it's a natural place for most UK brands to go next. I think what you just said there, it is a phenomenal business, and the growth of Beyond's, like, you don't see many businesses like that at all. So you've done a great job taking it to us, and listen also to the fact that you've done a lot of it pretty much on your own, which is crazy. So I think ending it, with the benefit of hindsight, if you could look back now and think, right, I wish I'd done this slightly differently, what would you potentially do differently if you could do it again?
Oh, gosh. I would lean on people more, but people who actually know what they're talking about. It makes me feel sad and guilty when I look back over the last few years and realise how many people who were there to help were trying to help me, who actually really knew what they were talking about. And I just was so engrossed and I couldn't see the wood from the trees. People were saying to me, I can help you with this, Lucie. No, it's fine, I'll just do it. And I just do everything myself, get on with it myself. And I made life really hard for myself, and also probably made people think I was really rude when I genuinely wasn't. I would say quality, not quantity. Be careful who you're hiring, because people can really, again, make or break the business. And one thing that I would say, which I've always been quite good at, is when you work with retailers, don't let them take the mick out of you, especially when you're a smaller brand. I agreed to things with retailers in the past because I thought it was a great opportunity, but you make no money off it. And that's ultimately what you want to be doing, being profitable and negotiate harder maybe. And I think that's probably my only advice. I'd say just go for it. But yeah, I don't know. It's a really difficult one. I don't know what I'd do differently.
I think it's all great points. But no, thanks so much for coming and taking the time to sit down with us. Be really honest as well. It's been a really great conversation.